You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News.
People say, how is AI going to affect humanity? Well, we actually already had an AI that rewired and was misaligned with humanity. Because when you swipe your finger on TikTok, or swipe your finger on Twitter, or swipe your finger on YouTube, you activated a supercomputer pointed at your brain to calculate, based on what 3 billion other human social primates have watched, seen, or looked at, what is the perfect next thing to show you when you swipe?
Nearly every discussion of social media inevitably leads to a discussion of all the ways technology is breaking our brains. The rise of artificial intelligence makes things all the more complicated. In this episode, an expert walks us through it all and how humans can fix it.
It's so much more than just misinformation. We often think about social media as kind of creating the climate change of culture. What I hope to do is sort of broaden and maybe zoom out a bit on what are the collective effects of technology and humanity.
That's technology ethicist Tristan Harris speaking at the Nobel Prize Summit last June. He's also a computer scientist and co-founder of the nonprofit Center for Humane Technology.
We often start our presentations with this quote by E.O. Wilson, the Harvard sociobiologist, who said, "The real problem of humanity is that we have paleolithic emotions or brains, medieval institutions, and godlike technology." And it's so clear, we repeat it in every presentation because I just feel like it so quickly summarizes the feeling that we have, that our brains are not matched with the way that our technology is influencing our minds. And so oftentimes we talk about the alignment problem in AI, right? How do we align AI with humanity? Well, how do we align our brains with our institutions having a steering wheel over something that's godlike, that's moving 1,000,000 times faster, especially as we have large language models, AIs, that are going to be moving way faster?
Tristan was featured in the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. It won 2 Emmys in 2021.
The Social Dilemma was a Netflix documentary I was a part of that was about the effects that social media had on humanity. It was rewiring the flows of attention and information in our society. And what we actually talk about is that people might have missed that was actually first contact between humanity and AI. So in first contact with social media, we have information overload, doom scrolling, loneliness crisis, the influencer culture, sexualization of young kids, which angle makes me look the best, polarization, bots and deepfakes, and basically the breakdown of our shared reality. Collectively, these effects are something like the climate change of culture.
So back to the question Tristan asked at the top of this episode. How did our first contact with AI go? Not well, to say the least.
We lost. How did we lose to this AI? What were the stories we were telling ourselves? It seems really aligned, right? Social media is going to connect people with their friends. We're going to give people what they want. We're going to show people the most personalized ads that are relevant to them, only the things that they would want to buy. These stories that we were telling ourselves are true. But that somehow hid what was underneath all that, which is the race to maximize engagement. Because how much have you paid for your TikTok account in the last year? How much have you paid for your YouTube account in the last year? How much have you paid for your Facebook account in the last year? 0. How are they worth $1 trillion in market cap? People say it's your data, but they're actually selling also your attention. So how do I get your attention? We add slot machine mechanics. Pull to refresh. How many likes did I get? Did I get more this time than last time? I just checked my email 5 seconds ago, but I'll check it again. It's not enough just to get your attention. If I'm a social media company, my goal is actually to get you addicted to getting attention from other people, because a person who's validation seeking and wants attention from other people is more profitable than someone who does not care about attention from other people.
This is what informs the common features across social media apps.
If Snapchat adds beautification filters, Instagram will lose if they don't also add beautification filters. TikTok was found to actually automatically add a beautification of between 1% and 5% without even asking people, because we're all users, mirror, mirror on the wall, which makes me look best of all, and we use that app, right?
The same thinking is responsible for features like retweeting and sharing.
Because a button that instantly retweets, reshares, this content quickly is good at creating attention addicts, right? Because now TikTok is literally competing with Instagram. If you post this video on Instagram, and Instagram offers you 100 views on average, but if you post it on TikTok, you get 1,000 views on average. If you're a teenager, where are you going to post your next video? TikTok, the one that gives you the more reach. So it's a race to who can inflate your ego and give you the most instant sharing as fast as possible. And we've all seen the effects of that. Fake news spreads 6 times faster than true news. And as other people have seen, this is the study from More in Common, this has led to a massive overrepresentation, a funhouse mirror, of the extreme voices to the moderate voices with this instant sharing. Because what's the difference between a moderate voice on the internet versus an extreme voice? They post more often, right? And moderate voices post infrequently. That's the first layer of the double whammy. The second is that when someone says something extreme, it goes more viral when someone says something more moderate. So even though there's a very small number of very extreme voices out there, social media takes that like 5% of the population and then just spreads it out and stretches it out over the whole canvas and movie screen of humanity. And you run society through that funhouse mirror for about 10 years, and you quickly end up in a very distorted world.
It may sound bleak, but there's a path to fixing all of this. More on that after a quick break.
So what's the solution to this problem? One of the things that I think we really need to get good at is recognizing that the complexity of our problems actually has exceeded the institutions. The complexity of our world is going up. Pandemics, what's the right way to respond to pandemic, what's going on with COVID, and then simultaneously our ability to respond to that complexity, both as our brains and our institutions, right?
But artificial intelligence is making this task all the more difficult.
Just yesterday, 2 days ago, the Pentagon, right, there's a fake image of the Pentagon being bombed. If I wanted to cause a bank run in the United States, if I'm Russia or China, I could easily just create photos of lines of people standing in front of Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, etc. I can devalue the US dollar like that.
This is why the solutions we've heard about for years now simply won't cut it.
We're thinking about content moderation and fact-checking, when really it's about how do we have wisdom? How do we have the bottom line, our brains and our institutions and our social trust and our social fabric actually match the speed and complexity of the evolutionary curve of technology and our issues? Think of it this way. If your immune system has a slower evolutionary pace than a virus has a fast evolutionary pace, which is going to win, your immune system or the virus? The virus. Our immune system are our institutions, our governance, our regulation. And that's why we have to upgrade those institutions. What this means is that the sense-making and choice-making of humanity in terms of both individually and in terms of our regulation, in terms of how our institutions act, has to match the complexity of the world.
Tristan says wisdom is key to closing the complexity gap. But what does that actually look like?
To go back to E.O. Wilson, is that we need to embrace our Paleolithic brains, upgrade our medieval institutions, and bind the race dynamics of the godlike technology.
That's a lot to process, so we'll break it down even further.
What do we mean by embrace our Paleolithic brains? You've been hearing from people today talking about confirmation bias, the social rewards that we get, belonging. That is embracing what it means to be human.
Think, for example, of the intuitive interface that Apple is known for.
Our name, the Center for Humane Technology, is named as such because my co-founder, Asa Raskin, his father, was the inventor of the Macintosh project at Apple. He wrote a book called The Humane Interface. And the word humane means having an honest, reflected view in the mirror of how does our brains really work. That's how he came up with and was conceiving of the Macintosh, because the Macintosh, different than the personal computer with a blinking green cursor and a command line interface, was a very non-ergonomic way to match our brains. But the Macintosh with the mouse and the menu bar and drag and drop and icons was a much more humane interface because it embraced how we really work on the inside. But now what we need to do is apply those kinds of insights to our brains have confirmation bias. We need to feel belonging rather than loneliness.
And here's what that looks like in practice.
If we were to get rid of the engagement-based business models that sell our advertising, when you open up Facebook, Facebook could be ranked instead of which content should I show you, It could be ranked in terms of what are things that I can do with different communities around me in my physical environment. Instead of showcasing virtual Facebook groups, they could be showcasing actual physical communities that people could spend time with each other. Because as many people have found out, when you spend physical time with people face to face, it automatically has healing properties, right? There's building trust, building connection.
That brings us to our outdated institutions.
Upgrading our medieval institutions, one of the limits of our institutions right now is they deal with acute harms. This product hurt this person. But it doesn't deal with diffuse, chronic, and long-term cumulative harms. Think climate change. Think forever chemicals in our atmosphere. Think climate change of culture, slow-rolling increases in mental health issues, addiction, loneliness, et cetera, in society. We need institutions that deal with those long-term cumulative diffuse issues rather than just the acute issues. Liability, for example, is something that we need for AI companies that's coming down the pipe, but liability only deals with an acute issue, like someone died while using a car or using a product.
And finally,
in terms of binding our godlike technology, we need to actually recognize when there's a race. If I don't do it, I lose to the guy that will. Right? If I don't use social media for my nonprofit to try to boost up my influence, I'll just lose to the other nonprofits that boost up their influence with social media. So it becomes a race to create this virtual amount of influence online. So as we are deploying this godlike technology, we need to actually recognize, not be upset at bad guys, bad CEOs, but get upset at bad games, bad races. You cannot have the power of gods without the wisdom, love, and prudence of gods. If you have more power than you have wisdom or responsibility, that by definition means you are going to be creating effects in society that you can't see, because you have more power than you have awareness of what those effects are. And one of the hardest things I think humanity is going to have to do in looking in the mirror is thinking about how do we bind and limit the power that we're handing out to the appropriate level of wisdom and responsibility. The biggest mistake we made with social media is handing out godlike powers of instant resharing to everyone, which can be very helpful in certain cases. But it's helpful specifically because it's bound to wisdom when it's going well. And when it's not going well, it's because that power is not bound to wisdom.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Follow Teka Teka News on your favorite podcast app or listen to us for free on YouTube. Thanks for listening.